My husband cheated on me with my sister. I thought it was just a fantasy. Then I found out there was a child, and that they had a plan to leave me behind. My name is Laura. I'm 35, and I've been married to Marco for 8 years. We always seemed solid, or at least I thought so. Lately, though, he started coming home late without clear reasons. He'd hide his phone whenever I asked about it. I told myself it was just work stress or something he didn't want to burden me with. But the quiet distance between us grew, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then one evening, I saw something I couldn't just brush aside. It hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. That moment changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. I was just trying to clean Marco's car. It wasn't a big deal, really. We had fought a bit that morning, the kind of fight that leaves you quiet but not angry anymore. I thought if I tidied up his stuff, maybe it would smooth things over. Maybe it would remind him that I cared, even if he seemed distant lately. So, I was sorting through the glove compartment, tossing out some old receipts and wrappers. His side of the car was usually a mess, but I never thought much of it. It's just how he is. But then, my fingers brushed against a folded receipt, tucked under some papers. I pulled it out and saw the name of a hotel on it. My heart caught, because the date on that receipt was our anniversary. I stared at the paper for a moment, not sure what I wanted to see or believe. The moment was supposed to be just ours, but here was this piece of paper, cold and real, telling a different story. I felt my throat tighten, like I couldn't swallow. My hands trembled a little as I folded it back up and slipped it into my bag. I didn't want to throw it away, but I wasn't ready to deal with it either. I sat back in the driver's seat, silent. I kept thinking about where he might have been. Who was he with? Did he remember our anniversary at all? The small things we said that morning, the way he avoided looking at me, suddenly made so much sense. But the questions kept piling up, and I didn't have any answers. Just that receipt. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was some mistake. Maybe he'd gone to the hotel for a meeting or something work-related. But it felt wrong. I remembered how he'd promised me we'd spend the day together. How we'd planned dinner, a little weekend getaway even. And now this. I tried to push the thought away, but it kept creeping back. I felt a mix of anger and confusion. Angry that he could do this, confused about why. There was a quiet sadness underneath it all, too. The kind that comes from realizing you might have been holding on to something that wasn't real anymore. I didn't call him that day. I didn't confront him. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, pretending the receipt wasn't burning a hole in my bag. I wanted to be strong, to figure out what was going on before saying anything. But it was hard not to feel betrayed. That night, I kept the receipt close, almost like a secret. It was proof, but proof of what exactly? I wasn't sure yet. I told myself I'd find out the truth, no matter what. I needed to know if the man I loved had been lying to me. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise. That night, after dinner, I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I pulled the receipt out of my pocket and held it up. "What is this?" I asked, my voice low but firm. Marco looked at it, then at me, and I could see the hesitation in his eyes right away. It wasn't like him to freeze like that. He swallowed and said, "It's for a colleague. We had a work thing." His voice was calm, but there was something shaky in it. I wasn't buying it. I looked at the name on the receipt and the hotel details, and then back at him. "And you take colleagues to hotels on our anniversary?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's what you want me to believe?" He avoided my eyes and ran a hand through his hair. "It's nothing like that," he said quickly. "We just needed a quiet place to discuss a project. That's all." But the way he said it, like he was trying to convince himself too, made me feel even more uneasy. I sat down, still holding the receipt. "You could have told me before," I said. "I'm not stupid, Marco. I'm not going to freak out over nothing, but this doesn't add up." He nodded, but he didn't say anything for a moment. Then he looked at me, really looked, and said, "I know it looks bad. I didn't mean to hide it, but it wasn't what you think." I wanted to believe him, but the doubt was already there, gnawing at me. He kept avoiding direct answers, and every time I asked for more details, he changed the subject or gave vague replies. I could see the guilt in his eyes, even if he tried to cover it up. "Why didn't you tell me about this colleague before?" I asked. "If it was just work, why hide it until now?" He shrugged, but it wasn't a casual shrug. It was the kind that said he was uncomfortable but didn't know how to explain. The silence stretched between us. I wanted to press him more, but part of me was already bracing for the worst. I could feel my heart pounding, but I stayed calm on the outside. I didn't want this to turn into a fight. Not yet. He finally said, "Look, I messed up by not telling you earlier. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more to it." His voice was quieter now, almost pleading. I nodded slowly, but I wasn't sure if it was relief or resignation. I looked at the receipt again. The hotel name was the same one where we had our first date years ago. It felt like a cruel joke. I thought about all the times we promised honesty. Now it felt like those promises were just words. "I want to trust you," I said. "But you have to be straight with me. No more secrets." He nodded again, but his eyes flickered away. I thought maybe this was the moment we turned a corner. Maybe he'd finally open up. But then the phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it quickly and silenced it without showing me. That little move made a knot tighten in my stomach. I wanted to ask who it was, but I didn't. Not yet. I told him I needed some time to think and went to our bedroom. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall, the receipt still in my hand. I kept replaying our conversation, looking for the truth hidden between his words. He knocked softly and said, "Can we talk more later?" I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say yes. The other part wanted to shut the door and keep it closed. I just nodded without looking up. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise. We had been going back and forth for hours. Every question I asked, he dodged or turned around. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I needed the truth. I wasn't going to let this go without knowing everything. At some point, his defenses cracked. He looked tired, like carrying this secret was heavier than he expected. Then he said it. "Okay, I'll tell you the truth." His voice was low, almost like he was afraid to say it out loud. "I'm having a relationship with your sister, Anna." The words hit me like a punch. I couldn't breathe for a moment. It felt like the floor opened up under me. I just stared at him, trying to process what he'd said. I remember my mouth going dry, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. I wanted to scream, cry, run away, anything. But I stayed still. I needed to hear more. "And the child?" I whispered, my voice barely there, like if I said it too loud, the whole truth would shatter me. I didn't want to know the answer, but I had to. He looked down, not meeting my eyes. "It's mine," he said, and I was speechless. He wasn't apologizing or begging for forgiveness. He just said it like it was a fact, like it was the simplest thing in the world. But to me, it was everything I never expected to hear. I felt a mix of anger and numbness rush through me. My hands clenched into fists, but I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, trying to understand how he could do this, how he could lie to me for so long, and with my own sister. The betrayal was sharp, but beneath that, I felt something quieter, something I wasn't ready to name. He tried to explain, saying it wasn't planned, that it just happened, that he didn't want to hurt me. But his words were empty. I didn't want to hear excuses. I just wanted to know if any of it was real, if the person I trusted was gone. I thought of Anna, my sister, how close we had always been. I didn't know if I felt more hurt for her or for myself. The silence between us grew thick. I wanted to demand answers, but I was afraid of what I'd hear next. The truth was out now, and it was worse than I imagined. I finally said, "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked, but I kept it steady. He shrugged, like he had no good reason. That shrug cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just the secret. It was the way he didn't care enough to tell me. We sat there, neither of us knowing what to say. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I wanted to scream at him, at Anna, at the whole world. But instead, I just felt a quiet ache. It was like a wound that didn't bleed but throbbed inside. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise. I didn't even think before grabbing my bag. I just shoved some clothes and essentials in there as fast as I could. My hands were shaking, but I kept going. The house felt like it was closing in on me. I couldn't stay another minute. I opened the door and stepped out, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I locked the door behind me without looking back. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called Sarah. She picked up right away, maybe because it was late. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked a little when I started talking. I told her everything I knew, the messages, the lies, all of it. I didn't hold back anything. I just needed someone to hear it, to make it real. "So what are you going to do?" Sarah asked quietly after I finished. "I don't know," I said, swallowing hard. "I can't just pretend this didn't happen. But I don't know if I can fix it either." "You need to move on," she said firmly. "But before you do, you need to understand how deep this goes. You can't just wipe this off your hands like it's nothing." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I thought I had enough already. I thought I was done. But hearing her say that made me realize I didn't have the whole picture. Maybe I was only seeing the surface. Maybe there was more. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something else was buried beneath all this. I don't want to dig through all this mess, I said, trying to hide how scared I was. I just want it to stop. Sarah didn't pause. I get it. But if you don't know the truth, you'll never really be free. You'll keep wondering. You deserve to know everything, no matter how ugly. That made sense. I hated the idea of chasing more pain, but I hated the unknown more. I told her I'd try. I promised I'd look deeper, just to get some answers. After I hung up, I sat on a park bench nearby, the bag still on my lap. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clearer. I started thinking about what Sarah said. If there was more, I needed to find it. I needed to understand the full scope of what had happened before I could decide what to do next. I pulled out my phone again and started scrolling through old messages, emails, anything that might have slipped past me. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together clues that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Every new detail made my stomach twist. Some things fit with what I already knew. Others didn't. I realized I had been blind to so much. As the night grew darker, I kept digging. It wasn't easy. Every discovery stung, but I told myself I had to be strong. I had to face this, no matter how much it hurt. I wasn't ready to forgive or forget, not yet, but I needed to see the whole picture. Eventually, I sat back and closed my eyes for a moment. The weight of everything was crushing, but there was a strange relief too. At least I was doing something. At least I wasn't just sitting in the dark anymore. I thought I was done with surprises. I thought I had seen the worst. But the silence that followed said otherwise. Sarah sat across from me, her phone open and the screen glowing between us. She looked tired, her voice low when she said, "I found something you need to see." I nodded, too numb to speak. She handed me the phone, and I stared at the documents she'd pulled up. It was a joint bank account, in both Marco and Anna's names. Opened over 2 years ago. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. 2 years. They'd been together that long. And I had no idea. I felt my hands go cold. The edges of my world started to blur. Sarah's voice cut through my silence. They planned this. Everything. The money, the meetings, the trips. I went through their messages. It's all there. She didn't need to say more. The proof was right in front of me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I needed to see it all, even if it broke me. I kept scrolling, seeing transactions to restaurants I didn't know, hotels I never heard of. The dates matched times Marco said he was working late or traveling for business. I could see the pattern now, the lies, the hidden calls, the careful cover-ups. It wasn't some recent mistake or a sudden betrayal. It was planned and kept secret for years. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. I wanted to ask why, but I didn't get an answer. No message could explain this. Sarah looked at me, her eyes soft but steady. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this." Her voice was quiet, but I heard the weight behind it. She knew this wasn't just about the bank account. It was my life torn apart. For a moment, I just sat there, feeling the silence between us grow heavy. I thought about all the mornings Marco kissed me goodbye, all the nights he said he loved me before sleeping. And behind it all, this secret world he built with Anna. I felt betrayed and small, but also strangely empty, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing it. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I looked at Sarah and said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" My voice was flat, but there was a tremor underneath. Sarah shook her head slowly. "I wasn't sure. I wanted to be sure. And I didn't want to hurt you if it wasn't true." Her hands trembled just a little. "But now you need to know everything." I nodded, even though I felt like I didn't want to hear more. But I needed the truth. I needed to see the full picture, no matter how ugly it was. I reached for the phone again, and Sarah started scrolling through more messages, dates, plans, everything they had kept hidden. The more I saw, the heavier it got. They weren't just hiding a fling. They built a life together in secret. They even planned to move in together, Sarah said. I imagined Marco telling Anna things he never told me. I pictured their secret dinners, their quiet laughs, the moments they shared while I was trusting him. I felt angry, but also ashamed. Ashamed that I didn't see the signs. Ashamed that I trusted him so blindly. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Instead, I sat there, letting the truth sink in piece by piece. Sarah's voice broke my thoughts again. "You're stronger than you think. You'll get through this." I looked at her, grateful but also bitter. I wasn't sure I believed her yet. I wasn't sure I believed in anything anymore. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the betrayal settle in my chest like a stone. "I need some air," I said. Sarah nodded, watching me go. Outside, the night was still, but inside me, everything was shaking. I thought it was just a lie, but it was a whole life they hid from me. I didn't know what to do next. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I spent the whole morning staring at my phone before finally typing out a message to a lawyer I found online. My hands shook a little as I hit send. It felt like I was crossing a line I'd been too scared to approach before. But I couldn't keep sitting there, feeling stuck. I needed to take back control, or at least try. The lawyer replied pretty quickly, setting up a meeting for the next day. Just knowing I had that was enough to make me breathe a bit easier. It felt like I was finally doing something real for myself, not waiting for things to get worse or hoping Marco would change. I was starting to plan my exit. After the call, I made a list of apartments in the area. Nothing fancy, just something small, close to work, where I could get away and start fresh. It didn't feel real to look at places, but each listing I saved felt like a tiny win. I told myself it was just practical, but inside, it was the first time in months I felt a flicker of hope. I told my best friend about all this that evening. She listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. I didn't want advice or pity. I just needed someone to hear that I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. When I hung up, I felt lighter, like the weight of pretending everything was okay was finally lifting just a little. The next day, sitting across from the lawyer in his office, I felt a strange mix of nerves and relief. He explained how the separation process worked, what I needed to prepare, and what rights I had. None of it was easy to hear, but it was clear. The facts on paper didn't leave room for the confusion or guilt I'd been carrying. He asked about Marco, and I kept my voice steady, just telling the truth. It felt strange to talk about our marriage like it was already over. But the more I spoke, the more I realized how detached I'd become from the idea of staying. I wasn't sure when that happened exactly, but it was there. After the meeting, I started gathering important documents and packing a small box with the essentials I'd need if I left quickly. I didn't tell Marco. Not yet. For now, this was my secret plan. Every little thing I packed felt like a brick in the wall I was building between my old life and what might come next. That night, I sat alone in our living room, the box at my feet. The silence was thick. I could almost hear the memories in the corners of the room. The laughter, the arguments, the quiet moments I'd tried to hold on to. But I was done pretending those memories meant I had to stay. I kept thinking about the last time I'd see Marco. I didn't want it to be a fight or a scene. I wanted it to be clear, final. I rehearsed what I might say, how I could keep my voice steady, how I wouldn't let tears or anger take over. It was like preparing for a battle I didn't want but had to face. The day I decided to tell him, I waited until he came home from work. He was tired, like always, but there was something different in his eyes when he saw me. Maybe he sensed what was coming. I sat down at the kitchen table, the box still unopened beside me, and looked at him. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. No speeches, no blaming. Just the truth. He blinked, like he didn't quite believe me at first. Then his face closed up, and he asked if I was sure. I nodded, because I was. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to explain. He didn't say much after that. Just asked when. I told him I was still figuring that out. It felt strange to have the power to decide, to set the terms. But I held on to it. That control was mine now. He left the room, and I stayed at the table, alone with my thoughts and the box. I thought maybe this was the end, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I met Marco at a small cafe near our old neighborhood. I didn't want to do it at home. The place was quiet, nothing too fancy, just enough space to talk without interruptions. When he showed up, I saw the tired in his eyes right away, like he hadn't slept properly for days. Maybe he hadn't. I didn't waste time. I looked at him and said, "We can't continue like this." My voice was steady, no shaking, no hesitation. I wanted to make sure he heard me clearly. He frowned and leaned forward, trying to catch every word. "I've spoken with a lawyer," I added. "I want a divorce." The words hung between us longer than I expected. Marco's face changed. First, confusion. Then disbelief. Finally, a kind of quiet desperation. "Are you sure?" he asked, almost whispering. "Maybe we can work this out. We just need time." I shook my head. "No, Marco. We've been here before. Too many times. There's nothing left to save." I saw his hands clench into fists on the table. I could tell he wanted to say more, but something was stopping him. I didn't want to hear the excuses. I needed to be clear. He paused, then said, I don't understand. When did you decide this? Was it that night? Or the months before? He looked at me like I was a stranger now. Maybe I was. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was, I had been deciding this for a long time, quietly, when no one noticed. Marco's voice cracked. We promised each other we'd try, that we'd fight for this. I nodded slowly. I know. I believe that too. But fighting isn't enough when there's no trust, no respect. We're just hurting each other now. He stared at me, like if he looked hard enough, he could find the old version of me somewhere inside. Please, he said, let's get counseling or something. Don't throw it all away. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to say yes, to hope it could work. But I couldn't. Counseling won't fix what's broken beyond repair, I said. I'm tired, Marco. I'm tired of pretending everything's okay. He looked away, swallowing hard. Then he looked back. So this is it. His voice was low. After everything? I nodded. Yes. It's over. I didn't reach out to touch him. It felt wrong. Like pretending could bring back what we lost. I'm sorry, I added quietly. But I have to do this for myself. There was silence for a moment. Then Marco sighed and leaned back in his chair. I didn't want this, he said. I still don't. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying. Maybe he was holding it in for me. Or maybe for himself. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the years we spent together reflected in his tired face. The plans, the fights, the quiet moments. It all felt heavy, like a book slammed shut, but with pages still stuck together. I don't want to hurt you, I said softly. But staying like this hurts me too. He nodded. I get it. I just wish it didn't have to end like this. We sat there for a while, neither of us saying much. The noise of the cafe around us felt distant. I thought about everything we lost and everything we never had. I thought about the future, uncertain and strange without him. When I finally stood up, I said, I'm going to go now. Marco didn't move. Take care of yourself, he said quietly. I nodded and walked away without looking back. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise. I moved into a small apartment in the city just a few days after filing for divorce. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. It's quiet here, which is both a relief and a reminder of everything I lost. The walls are thin, and sometimes I can hear neighbors talking or the hum of traffic outside. It's a different kind of noise than what I was used to. It doesn't fill the space the same way. 2 weeks ago, I sent the divorce papers. Since then, I haven't spoken to Marco or Anna. I blocked their numbers the day I left our old place. At first, I thought maybe I'd want to hear from them, or maybe they'd want to explain things. But the silence after cutting them off feels cleaner somehow. Less messy. I don't want to go back to the way things were. Not now. I spend most days just trying to get used to the new routine. It's strange waking up in a place that isn't filled with memories of us. I don't have to tiptoe around secrets or pretend to be okay. I make coffee in the morning and sit by the window, watching people walk by. Sometimes I catch myself expecting to see Marco on the street, but it never happens. The hardest part is the quiet. I'm alone with my thoughts more than I want to be. Some nights, I lie awake just staring at the ceiling, thinking about what went wrong and what could have been different. But I don't let myself spiral. I remind myself this is the start of something new, even if it's scary. I've started looking for work again. It feels good to have a reason to get out, to talk to people who don't know my story. I'm not ready to tell anyone much about what happened. Most of the time, I just say I'm between places. It's easier that way. Some days, I catch myself reaching for my phone to text Marco or Anna, just to hear a familiar voice or get some kind of answer. But then I remember why I blocked them. I don't want to hear excuses or lies. I want to build something real, starting with myself. I'm trying to find happiness in small things now. A walk in the park, a new book, a cup of tea at a cafe. It's slow, and some days feel heavier than others. But I'm holding on to the idea that I can be okay again, that I deserve to be. Sometimes I feel guilty for wanting this after everything. Like I'm supposed to be angry or broken forever. But I'm not. I'm tired of carrying that weight. I want to breathe without it. I don't know what the future holds. I don't even know if I'll ever see Marco or Anna again. But for now, this small apartment, this quiet space, is where I'm starting over. It feels fragile, but it's real. I thought the hardest part was the divorce itself. But maybe it's what comes after, learning to live without them in my life. I keep telling myself it's okay to want more than pain. I'm not sure when I'll be ready to let go completely. But I'm trying. One day at a time. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise. I'm divorced now and living alone in a small apartment that I picked out myself. It's quiet in a way that feels both empty and peaceful. Marco moved in with Anna and their kid. I don't see him much anymore. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if things could have gone differently, but mostly I'm trying to stay focused on what's ahead. I've learned that trust isn't something you can just take for granted. It's fragile like glass. Once it breaks, it's hard to put back together the same way. I always thought I could rely on my own judgment, but I ignored the little doubts I had. Now I listen to that voice more. It's a small thing, but it feels important. It's been painful, no doubt about that. But somehow, I'm finding strength I didn't know I had. I'm rebuilding, slowly. Not just the usual stuff, work, bills, routines, but how I see myself and what I want out of life. I'm learning to be okay with being alone, and even to like it sometimes. The future feels uncertain, but it's mine to shape now. I thought the hardest part would be moving on from Marco, but it turns out the hardest part is trusting myself again. And maybe that's the real beginning. If something feels off in your relationship, don't just ignore it. I learned that the hard way. Trust your gut, even if it's uncomfortable or scary. It's better to face the truth than to live with doubt eating away at you. You deserve to know where you stand. Sometimes, that means having tough conversations or making choices you never thought you would. But holding on to something broken won't fix you or make things better. Your peace of mind matters more than trying to keep up appearances or avoid conflict. It took me a long time to realize that, and I wish I had sooner. Starting over isn't easy, but it can be the best thing you do for yourself. You don't owe anyone your happiness or your silence. Protecting your own well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary. If you have to walk away, that's okay. You're allowed to put yourself first. In the end, you have to live with yourself every day. Don't settle for less than you deserve. Trust can be rebuilt, but if it's completely gone, don't be afraid to let go. Your happiness and peace should always come first. Listening to yourself is the first step. Take it.